So my name's Chris Hill. I'm the group owner of Broadband and Media at Telstra, essentially the platforms which run our broadband networks and also media networks, including CDNs, distribution networks and what have you. Today I want to talk about the path to 5G, where Telstra's at with our existing 4G coverage, especially to do with fixed wireless broadband, but also to look at where we get to actually get to the 5G vision. Where are we? Excellent. I've been at Telstra for quite a while. My email address is Chris. I'm certainly happy to receive some emails or talk to me afterwards. So what we have at Telstra is very much like the same as all of the other providers here. You've seen massive growth in data usage, mostly driven by video. Our mobile network is about 70% video now, so that's been a big change for us. You'd see it also an explosion of connected devices. Not that long ago, you had a single modem connected to a single PC in the house. Then it became a few PCs, then it became every mobile, then everything in your house is now connected. So on average, about 20 or so devices we see within the home network across the board, but that's growing rapidly, and it's pretty much you can't get anything which isn't Wi-Fi now. In addition, everything's always on. So the home has become a lot more chatty. You have security cameras wanting to upload. So the upload speed has now become a lot more important for our customer base as well. And the idea of Netflix not being working is frankly horrifying for most people under 20. The Internet of Things is slowly becoming a reality. We're seeing that much more in the home. The prevalence again of cameras, door sensors and what have you, and the literally plethora of vendors out there has been a big challenge for us. And finally we get to the actual network, which is the 5G network, which we're starting to roll out. I'll talk to that in a moment. So just taking a bit of a step back to explain where our strategy has been so far, which is slightly different from a lot of other providers. We have a hybrid for all policy, so we only have one gateway. Every single customer gets the same gateway. It has LTE on board, it supports VoLTE, it has DECT, it's VDSL gateway, Ethernet for two-box solutions. And the reasoning why is because at the moment Telstra is going through, like all other Australian providers, a transition period where the national broadband network, which is a government-owned entity which supplies broadband to our customer base, is changing technology. So we're moving from HFC, ADSL to fibre nodes, distribution point, fibre direct, etc., etc. Now, as we're doing that, there is disconnection times. There's lots of IT involved and there's lots of potential breakage. So by having hybrid for all, we offer essentially a failover service during this. As a new customer, you can grab a gateway. It doesn't matter if you've got no cables to your house or you build a new house or whatever else, that gateway works from day one. We're not idiots. We're actually protecting our network. So we deprioritise this mobile traffic. And a lot of the reasons around that is obviously if there's a large-scale outage, you don't really want 50,000 hybrid gateways suddenly flipping over. So we deprioritise the traffic in the network. What this has actually driven, though, is a cost reduction for our service. Now, it seems strange, you're actually adding a lot more cost into the gateway, and it is an expensive gateway. However, we're looking at proactive fault management. About 15% of our calls to front of house are just about service issues and service outages. If you can reduce those, obviously you start winding back that cost. As an example, recently we had a small outage of about 26,000 customers go offline. Of that, about half of those customers have the new hybrid gateway and about half didn't. Of the half that didn't, about 3% called in and told us that their broadband was down, which we knew. Of the ones with hybrid, not a single customer rang us up. So in 26,000 customers, that's about 400 calls we avoided just from having hybrid gateways. And if you cost out what your calls to your front of house cost you, it starts adding up very quickly. And all you need is a few of those outages happening, even a mass scale outage, and you actually start getting your money back quite well. On top of this, we're looking at other technologies such as LTE-B. So LTE-B and the gateway, I'm sure everyone else is in the same room here, has the problem with Fortnite. Every time there's a new Fortnite update, our bandwidth gets absolutely smashed at 10 PM at night when the new season comes out. To actually be able to push firmware updates via LTE-B and a broadcast method actually takes a lot of that kind of peak demand away. And we're also looking at multipath TCP. However, a 4G implementation is obviously a whole lot more complex, and it's not really built for that. Just to wind up, I suppose at this point in time, we have 1.6 million hybrid gateways out there, which is about half of our population, and we've done about 900,000 last year, so we're aggressively going after our customer base. This is a bit of motherhood stuff. Everyone knows, obviously, about 5G, massive increase in spectrum, large increase in speed. Most of this thing really is around the capacity. Speed's great. Our 4G network in Australia is really quite good, and excessive amounts of speed on top of that is even better, obviously. It really comes down to scale, it comes down to the capacity side, but also those costs. So what we've got here is the faster speeds, obviously for higher downloads. You've got lower latency, which will come in time, and the business model around that at the moment is interesting and difficult. Gaming is obviously one of the first cab off the rank. And the last thing is really around crowded places. So you've obviously seen it at large football grounds and sports stadiums where you've got 100,000 people in a very closed environment. The 4G network just literally doesn't have enough spectrum to service that. We also offer sports streaming on our mobiles, and of course there's lots of people who actually watch one game physically being there, and they're actually watching another sport on their mobile. I won't dwell too much on this. It's the usual triangle diagram around enhanced mobile broadband, low latency, ultra reliability, and machine-to-machine comms. I think everyone's covered that already today. One of the points around the fixed wireless side is really choosing the technologies which are actually going to drive it forward. A lot of, obviously, the 5G side has a heavy mobile influence, but we're also looking at what are the kind of elements which we're going to be deploying to our fixed broadband customers. One of the key things here is we're looking at network slicing, reducing the blast zones of when we do have outages, which are inevitable. The software-defined networking is coming in time. We're seeing that slowly evolve as more and more vendors get on board, and that's being pushed heavily, obviously, by the telcos ourselves. The virtualization function of where functions go, it's been an interesting conversation so far of how much do we push to the cloud, how much do we push back into the gateways, and if we are spending more money on gateways, what are we actually doing with that gateway? So Telstra's path to 5G so far, one of our key things we didn't do with 4G LTE was get involved with the standards bodies too much. We regretted that a few years later. We found that being involved this time around has been a much more formative experience, and we've actually been able to guide, I suppose, for particularly Australian conditions, which are, there is a lot of people in very, very confined spaces in the cities, and then there is just nothing. And long distance and other geographic issues around Australia are actually particular, so we've been focusing on that. We've just launched 5G quite recently. It's going to take time. The rollout is not easy. We have obviously a lot of existing 4G sites not being exactly great for 5G sites. So our coverage, you can see the map of Sydney there, is spotty at best at this point in time. However, that is obviously infilling day by day. We're going after the regional centres and the places which make sense. And finally, obviously, the comment was made before around, obviously, as we go to 5G, we're upgrading the backhaul speed. So we're going from 1 gig to 10 gig connections right across the board. So the kind of benefits which are helping 5G rollout will actually help your LTE customers in the meantime. Now, it's not all good news. Some of the challenges we've seen so far are the ones I wanted to talk about today. So firstly, the network build, the rollout is going to take some time. So if you start putting out 5G gateways into your homes, how many of those homes will actually have 5G coverage? So for us, with a hybrid for all policy, it's a very expensive mistake to make. You could be rolling out gateways to customers who may have no 5G coverage for maybe 2 or 3 years. So you've got a 3-year-old gateway which you might be replacing at that point in time. So you all have to work out when does it make sense to actually deploy this type of technology and get your customer base on board. On top of that, in-home coverage, one of the things we've done with our LTE gateways is we obviously can see the signal strength. We've got 700 megahertz, what have we got? 1800 and 2600, no, sorry, 700, 2100 and 2600. And our gateways actually report back to us what signal strength is. So we can work out which bands are actually getting through to houses. A lot of houses are made from different construction materials. The location of the gateway is invariably anywhere in the house. We can see down the streets where we have good coverage, terrible coverage, good coverage, good coverage. So whether they've got a dungeon their gateway's in or a cupboard or whatever else. So we're actually starting to map out what our neighbourhoods are looking like with 4G. So when we get to the 5G conversation, we will know from a certain point of view, or we've got a pretty good indication of which of the houses which we know are going to have difficulties with the new frequencies. And even in suburban areas, even with 700 megahertz, we have black spots. So the mass rollout on that is going to be difficult. Then there's the question of installation options. Steve just spoke before, and you saw his diagram of antennas on the top of the house or on the side, or it's a desktop unit which we put close to the window. What we obviously find is that location may be nowhere near where the gateway is. So the gateway may be, say, in the study, or it may be in the kitchen or in the family room. That may be exactly in the wrong spot for your antenna array, etc. So there's a conversation you need to have and start thinking about of where does this go? And customers will move stuff around. We have a terrible issue with a lot of our customers just putting the gateways flat, shoving it in corners. So what customers do with 5G will be an issue. For us, we've spent a lot of money on the 4G gateway. Are we going to go and replace all those gateways tomorrow with a 5G version? No. So the second question is, well, how do you do that? So putting it into a booster or a third device is another option which we're looking at. And again, if you haven't gone to the LTE, that's another option for you as well. And the final point on this, I suppose, is it's the increased cost of this gateway. There is a lot of money being put into these gateways. If you're rolling them out at 900,000 gateways a year, we have a long haul for a lot of this. So the actual gateway cost for 5G is a thought process, but obviously for your own networks, how long that actually takes time to get to the 4G side is something to be thought of. And finally, I suppose I'll leave you with a message around the migration and how we've come from. LTE was launched in Australia, how many years ago is it now? It's quite a while now. We have just announced last week that we're closing down our 3G network in 2024. We've recently closed down our 2G network. We're actually getting those networks out of our operations earlier. And most of that is around operational costs and spectrum. The refarming of our spectrum for 3G is very valuable to us. We've got a large, significant amount of 850 out there, and we're looking to obviously refarm that and offer to other products. So where we were, I suppose, when the launch of LTE and the features and functionality we had on it is very, very different from where we are now. So the promise, I suppose, of 5G and the expanse and the opportunities that evolves for Telstra are great, and that's something we're all looking forward to. Thank you.